Welcome to the Anti-Architect Podcast. I am your host, Christian Giordano. As president and owner of the design firm Mancini Duffy, I am driven by a quest for learning and radically changing the industry. With this podcast, I'm hoping to improve the industry that I'm so passionate about by taking a critical look at how architects work through a variety of voices and shared experiences. Robin, thank you so much for taking the time to be my guest here on the Anti-Architect Podcast.
Thank you, Christian.
Awesome.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yes,
Waited all summer for this.
Oh, nice. So I wanted to start with talking about America ByDesign and the episode that you so nicely hosted our team, sort of touring through that project. Which was our TSX project, which we've done a couple episodes here on the podcast. For episode 41, I looked it up, was specifically on TSX. So first, I want to thank you for presenting that episode. It was a very proud moment for us, for sure. It was great to see it on like real television too, which was cool.
You're welcome. Thank you for making it all happen.
Awesome. So what was your impression of the project from your perspective on the show?
Well, first of all, I just want to make a pretty major shout out to everybody on the team. Jessica Amato, my old friend, actually was the one to kind of bring us all together.
Nice.
So I'd love to thank her for that. And Bill Mandara and John were incredible to work with, and I learned so much. Obviously, we really focused quite a bit on the lifting of the theater. That was the kind of the primary conversation that I had, especially first with Bill.
Yep.
And I mean, that was really what led my curiosity first and foremost into the project. Once we got inside and really started talking about those interior preservation elements, and of course the collaboration with PBBW, which was fascinating to me as well, that these two titan companies can come together and actually and collaborate.
Perkins Eastman was in there
and
too.
And Perkins Eastman. And how about all the GCs on that project?
Yeah,
I mean, that was unbelievable too. Just the collaboration of all of those entities coming together in a place like Times Square was fascinating to me.
Yeah, it was cool. And what was your favorite part of that project?
Well, definitely the theater lift.
Yeah.
That to me was the most fascinating. Just understanding about how the ring had to be built around the theater, and how it just had to incrementally be very carefully lifted.
Yep.
And then once it was, there was that whole sort of section underneath the theater where you could kind of live and exist, like this sort of being John Malkovich kind of world under there.
Yeah.
So just that kind of engineering feat, and the way that you guys kind of had to come together with so many different consultants. To make that happen. To me, that was, the most fascinating. Yeah,
it's still crazy. Like when I've gone there and been able to be under the theater where they have, there's obviously tons of others. There's two subcellars essentially now below that. But just to think like, holy crap, this old concrete theater is suspended above us. Like it just doesn't, it's hard to even comprehend, even having watched it be done, which is crazy.
I know. And then I had to kind of keep being reminded, like when I first came into the theater wasn't really there. It was actually Bill and I had a nice little, exchange about that. I was like, Bill, where's the theater? You're like, no, you got to go up the escalator. And then it's like old theater, new theater, old theater. And the way that it kind of all married together, I just found to be absolutely fascinating, because all of the different players and pieces and parts that had to make that happen successfully.
Yeah, and the best bathrooms of any theater in all of Broadway, for sure.
Very nice bathrooms.
Yes.
But the Judy Garland stairs happen to be one of my personal favorites.
So how did your role as a presenter on America ByDesign first come about? And what has surprised you most about being on that series?
Well, I kind of wiggled my way in a little bit, which is something that I'm sort of known for. The show contacted me for a Perkins Eastman project, actually, and to be a sponsor. And when I sort of heard the pitch and thought about everything that was happening, I'm always looking for new ways to express, ourselves in the industry and new forms of media. So I just thought it sounded like such an amazing and exciting show to be a part of. So I said, sure, I can be a sponsor. I said, but, what else you got, So at that time, the show was just starting. It was only preparing for season 2.
Okay.
And it was the executive producer, Mike Chapman, was still very much has his hands on everything, but it was really bootstrapping at that point. And so we got to, have talks on, mostly, via Zoom, because I think he was in Greece. And we just, one thing led to another. And I just said, listen, if I can bring you some projects through my vast network of architects in New York, and maybe I can help with the funding aspect as sort of like a little, guest producer, would it be something that we can do together where I'd be able to present? And he was like, okay, mate, we'll see about that, and we liked each other. We had a great rapport. And that's what I did. I called up all of my favorite, friends in the industry, Jessica Amato being one, and said, we're doing this thing. And I don't know. I mean, it's new. I don't know what to tell you other than that it seems cool. Do you want to give it a try? And the Palace was one of the projects that came out very early on as a possibility. Of course, I think like most things associated with that project, it was long and arduous.
Yes, 7 years.
A lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of hands, a lot of ways that things had to come together. But eventually it did. And of course, I had my hand up the whole time to be the presenter for it, and that's kind of how it happened. And then now it's been about a year, and I would say I've had about 12 presentations that I've done on the show.
I was watching a bunch over the past couple of weeks.
We have one this weekend that's going up with Fogarty Finger, which is one of my absolute favorites.
Oh,
They're
nice.
Longtime clients of mine. Alexandra Cooper was conducting the tour. She's one of the design directors. And it was a great stage property, so we're excited about that one. And we've done other things with many other very, very well-known architects, which if you've seen the show, I could talk about all day. I mean, that's
and it's more than just America by Design, which I didn't realize, because there's Europe by Design, there's other parts of it. It's really just by design.
Yes,
is the title of the show.
By Design is the I guess you would call it. I mean, Mike would have to probably explain it better, but there's about 5 or 6 television shows. But I will tell you, America by Design Architecture has really kind of taken over as the crown jewel.
Oh, nice.
A lot of it has to do with the show's relationship with the AIA.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, Lakeisha Woods, which was one of the, I think she was the past director, really took that on. And every time somebody kind of grabs onto it and says, yeah, this is something I want to do, it sort of falls into place, and then it kind of grows. Like, for instance, now we have a relationship with the IIDA.
Right.
Cheryl Durst has been very supportive of the show, and so we're hoping to have some IIDA projects.
Oh, that's great.
That's how it kind of grows. You just sort of start with one early adopter that says, yeah, I don't mind doing that. I'll be on camera. I'm not that shy, even though I'm an architect. And then, maybe their colleague sees it, or maybe with the AIA, a competition winner. And it kind of goes from there.
Well, I just love that it's obviously you can find it on the internet, but it's also mainstream on CBS. So it exposes these kind of projects to a larger audience, which is always great, because I feel like we are still even though everyone interacts with architecture and design, obviously on a regular basis, we're still sort of a boutique thing where no one really knows what we do.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And crafting the dialogue on the show around the everyday user or the enthusiast, as well as speaking to the architect, which is, again, the AIA, it's a lot of people that are industry people that are watching the show. You have to really play to both audiences. And that's really the craft of the show, is being able to tell a story that's compelling to both the, the novice,
Mm-hmm.
the enthusiast, and the professional. So when it works at its best, that's what it's doing.
Well, when we're the architect for a major campus for Netflix in New Jersey, our Red Bank, New Jersey office is running point on that particular project. When that's done in Lord knows how many years,
okay,
we'll have to have you come on and do one on that.
We'll be waiting
it's
for
fascinating.
you.
It's actually a fascinating campus that we're doing. So.
Yeah, that's great.
And what goes into that kind of stuff. So.
I think we looked at Boca Ria also, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure
great.
if that one is aired yet or filmed yet.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, that was another one that we talked about.
Jan, the owner of Boca Ria, is an amazing guy.
He is. I met him on a Zoom call.
He was my first podcast, as a matter of fact.
He's a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was my first podcast on here. Yeah. I always say to him, I'd like to redo it with him, because I had no idea. Not that I know what I'm doing now, but I had really no idea what I was doing on that first episode.
I say that about teaching all the time. I wish I could go back to those poor souls that were stuck with me in those first couple of semesters.
So obviously you work with a lot of architects and interior designers. So if you had to pick one thing, what annoys you about architects or interior designers?
I had this book, but it weighed too much to take on the LIRR, this morning. I did give a little bit of thought to this, and I think anybody on the industry side probably has come with a lot of the same sort of gripes, right? So it's the I have a little joke. Everybody wants fake things to look natural and natural things to look fake. And that's kind of really speaks to the sometimes misalignment with the reality of materials and what we can really get through customization. And that's something that I've always struggled with, sort of architects wanting everything to be just so. And then you kind of knock yourself out. And the bigger the name, the bigger the star architect, the more uncompromising, they tend to be. And then, sometimes you get there, and then for whatever reason, the whole thing could go bye-bye, and you kind of, what happened to that guy? I thought we were best friends, And digital platforms, which can remain nameless, haven't really helped too much, because I think there's a disconnect now with materiality and the value of customization and of even sampling.
Interesting.
So we have found that there's a sort of a re-education that needs to happen with the younger kind of crowd, the Gen Z crowd, right? There's a little bit of a disconnect from the actual reality of materiality.
Yeah.
So that's something that I kind of harp on. That's a little bit of a soapbox of mine. That's why I teach. That's why I spend so much time mentoring.
When you say the digitalization of materials, what exactly do you, and I'm going to ask you about Material Bank in a little bit, but
I've never heard of them.
What what do you mean by that? In terms, is it like I'm taking a material in my 3D model and I'm putting it on there and I'm basically saying that's the material?
It can be that. I mean, I have found, and maybe you can tell me that we're finding material specialists and specification kind of watchdogs are being put in place in firms more and more now, because a lot of younger designers are specifying things from a digital realm, whether it be from a digital platform or be from online research. And, now we're going to see it coming from AI more and more, right?
Yeah.
And without really that connection with the materiality, like literally holding it in your hand.
Yeah.
I always say there's nothing like doing your own home project to understand the material, right? I'm doing a kitchen right now. I've learned so much about things I didn't even know about wood and tile just doing my own home project, right? Yeah. So without even some connection to the materiality, to the physical, there is something that gets lost there.
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as speccing, something that looks like a piece of wood for flooring, but in fact it's a piece of plastic laminate. Nothing against plastic laminate, but it was never really meant to be used in that application, right? And so those are kind of that. That disconnection.
Yeah.
And speaking of disconnection, there's another little thing that I also really love to gripe about, although not here. This is, I did a lunch and learn here a couple of weeks ago, and I found everybody to be tremendously engaging. But, we've heard about that, the Gen Z stare, it's kind of going around on the internet. Like, I call it the architect stare. So it's like the Gen Z stare, but just with a little bit more academic superiority, like kind of thrown in, But, any sales rep will tell you this, you're in front of 20, 30 people doing a lunch and learn, and, you're out there and you're pouring your heart out. You've got your points. You're not reading off the PowerPoint. You're throwing in a couple of little jokes here and there. I mean, I'll do a song and dance, like you've never seen. I don't care, just to get a laugh. And, you just get that, that blank, kind of stare, and you don't know what's going on.
They're there for the free lunch.
You don't know what's going on back there. I can't, in my heart, nobody's there for my free lunch. I don't even give that great of a lunch. It's like, I do a pretty decent lunch. I'm Italian, so I always ran too much food. But yeah, there's that little bit of that kind of, I don't know, maybe you could tell me. I've never really fully understood with that.
Listen, it's true. There's, one thing I would say is we're a little old school here, where we still have a material librarian. Megan Mead.
I know her well.
And she's been in the industry for a long time, and she's been with us for, I think she's our longest standing employee here. But there's a value to that, right? A tremendous value. That, number one, it takes the pressure off the designers for having to meet with the reps all the time, which can take a lot of time. The schedules are always compressed these days. We have not begun a project where we're not automatically behind the minute we start. It's, oh yeah, we should have started this project 6 months ago, but the deadline hasn't changed, right? So there's a constant flow of we're behind, so designers are under pressure, that kind of thing. So having that resource librarian to curate the materials, and as you said, I liked what you said about the digitalization, because back in my day, I used to have to actually take the material and scan it if we were going to put it in a rendering. So we actually had to have that material. You couldn't search the internet or use AI to make a brick. Right, you could, but there was like 10 of them, and they all looked the same, and they kind of sucked. So we used to have to scan the material. So there was that connection. So I think keeping that, I'm glad to hear more firms are kind of thinking about that now. What are the actual materials that we're using? As far as kind of the blank stares, I don't know. I think it's a lot to do with social media and the phone constantly being entertained all the time. And when you have to put down that phone, maybe you just don't know what to do anymore.
You don't know what to do yourself. I do have a remedy for it.
Okay.
I brought an example today. I actually tried this out here, and it was very successful. So I do because I teach, I do little learning outcomes at the end of all of my conversations, at each chapter, and then I give away little gifts. So I brought this for you today.
Oh, thank you.
A little slinky.
I love slinkies.
And they're very popular. And I also brought, because you look kind of athletic to me, so you can choose.
Oh, I like
That's
that.
a little basketball desk game that you can play with.
No, I like the slinky. I like the slinky.
This is fun. This is the grand prize.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
the slinky was very popular here at CDW. So I actually give away really silly gifts and
smart
like
idea.
nostalgic toys.
Yeah.
And people really respond to it, and it also gets them to compete a little bit.
Yeah.
And answer questions and engage.
Oh, that's
so
great.
That's it's fun and it's silly. That's kind of my thing. I like to have a lot of fun with people, but it works.
That is great. I love it.
And they're fidget toys, and we all have.
Everybody, yeah.
We're all fidgeters. I know I am. So that's my gift to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I will keep it here and use it as a fidget toy.
Please do.
So how do you, it's kind of keeping along with some of these architect questions, do you find younger designers think differently about material? I mean, we talked about the digitalization side, but that think differently about the materials more than seasoned architects?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not to keep harping on the whole relationship thing, but I think that relationships and human relationships play a big role in how we look and interact with materials, because when you have someone like Megan and I go back many years, and we, consider her a friend. She can call me or email me, and we can have a dialogue, or I can have a dialogue with you about materials and what something can do, what it maybe wouldn't do. We could talk about budget. We can talk about longevity, care, sustainability attributes, all of those things. And it's a sort of a give and take dialogue that at the end sort of results in a deeper, more intimate understanding of that material.
Yeah.
When you're sort of just staying with facts and figures that you would pull, through a digital means, that you're sort of disconnected from the spirit and the soul of the material. And I love materials. That's my thing. So I do believe they have sort of, especially the organic, like wood and stuff. There's something that gets lost when it's it's strictly on data and not this sort of that nurturing that kind of comes through dialogue and brainstorming.
Yeah.
Thinking through what would be an exciting way to, integrate a material into a design. Right?
Yeah.
We get that all the time. A designer will come to us and say, we're doing this space and we want it to feel a certain way. It should feel very, spacious, or we want to have it, there's going to be a lot of biophilia, and we're going to have, a green wall, and we want to integrate sustainable materials in a way that doesn't just feel like they were kind of plopped in the space, but sort of, you're interacting with them and really sort of getting that sense of that tactile quality. So we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I could say, well, do you ever think about, doing something that has, a certain type of texture, or maybe we work with a different type of penetrative stain that won't be so, plasticky or have a little bit more of a natural quality to it, or, things like that. When you talk about any material, there's so many different ways that you can work with it to express the notion, the concept that wouldn't necessarily come through in just a spec.
Or even, hey, we use this material in this situation and it didn't perform all that great, and so therefore I wouldn't recommend it for that. You'll never know that off of the internet.
Right. And that's something we actually have always prided ourselves on, because our company has always been focused on innovative materials. And so years ago, we had a lot of wacky things in the first few years of our business, very experimental. And we had to sort of make a promise that we would talk people out of stuff as much as we talk them into it, because we would never want somebody to use one of our materials in a way that was inappropriate. Right. And that I still carry that through today, although our materials are a lot more established now, very much commercial ready. That kind of, sort of saying like, this isn't the best use of this material. This isn't going to necessarily wear that you want it to. I mean, you look at things like wood flooring. Everybody loves walnut. It's also a very soft wood, right? Yeah. It's one of the softest of the American hardwoods, and it's not really appropriate for the necessarily the most high traffic situations. Or, it might not. It might be fine if you're okay with something that's going to wear in a certain way. I always say, like the leather jacket or the jeans. Are you the kind of person that that takes your jeans to the dry cleaners, or are you the kind of person that likes to wear something until it kind of falls off you threadbare? That's the way you should look at how you select materials.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the bamboo flooring that was in and out, man. I mean, that was like all the rage, and then it started not performing.
Yeah.
It was soft, and people's heels were going through it, and all of a sudden it stopped, right?
Well, yeah, because it was listen, we could talk about bamboo all day long. I actually cut down my own bamboo tree in China. So, I know a lot about bamboo.
Nice.
And you're right. And I was part of a lot of those projects many years ago.
We specified it on everything. We put it in our apartment.
Yeah. I had it in my last house, actually. I loved it, but I knew how to work with it. Here's the thing about innovative materials, and this comes up, not so much as it used to in the early days, because when I first started back in the late 90s, it was all about, it was a different era, right? It was that postmodern era. It was like all about resins and translucency, and everything was innovative. It was pre-9/11. Fire rating and performance wasn't quite as, as, I'm not going to say not important, but people weren't looking at it wasn't as stringent as it had to become after that period. But I always found that innovative materials, when something came out that was new, people always expect it to perform in this like otherworldly way. I mean, why else would it exist if it wasn't to perform in a way that nothing else could ever could match? And that's not necessarily the case. In reality, natural bamboo is only about as hard as red oak, which also dents with the high heel, right? And so if you're using it in, a retail space in Soho on a ground floor, chances are it's going to look pretty crappy within, a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, because the same would be true of a comparable material. So we learned over time, what was appropriate and what not so much. Now we do a ton with bamboo, but it's typically used if we're using it in a commercial application, we use a stranded, compressed version of it that's very, very hard. And we actually named it a product that we do call stiletto because it won't dent with the high heels.
Oh, nice.
So that's made out of bamboo and doesn't compromise sustainability, I might add. But for the typical material, it works beautifully for acoustical panels and vertical applications and furniture, case goods, anything like that. But, it took years to come to that. And some projects that, wasn't exactly the most successful, like you're saying.
Where do you see architects these days on the sustainability front and materials? How are we doing with that?
Well, there's certainly a lot more conversation. There's a lot more requirements than ever before, a lot more ways to judge sustainability, particularly from the younger generation. I'm about to find out because I start school on Tuesday, and sustainability is in the title of my course.
Oh, nice.
So I understand that the younger generation, from what I'll learn, has a lot of, they're more compartmentalized in how they view sustainability. So there's a health piece of it that young designers are very concerned with. Of course, there's climate change. Of course, there's social justice, which kind of falls into the sort of the same bucket in a way. So there's like all of these different elements now that folks are looking at, whereas when I first came into the industry, it was like, oh, does it have recycled content? Great, we're good,
Right.
you know. And now we're looking at, you know, that greater aspect of life cycle analysis, you know, the expectation for carbon, the expectation to have an HPD to really be able to be willing to disclose, which isn't always easy when you're talking about composite materials. So these conversations are happening all the time. In New York, I think we sometimes things can be a little performative in certain sectors of design. You know, there are certain areas where I think we want to kind of talk the talk, but we're not necessarily able to walk it all the way through. Whereas there's other parts of the country where I think it's sort of filtered its way through in every single aspect of a project. Here, I think, you know, residential, hospitality, retail, those are some areas where it doesn't necessarily get woven in.
Absolutely.
I think in the same way as, let's say, a large-scale civic project or a healthcare project where it's, you know, really critical to achieve, those mandate.
Well, I mean, we used to do so many LEED certified projects, right? And now less and less we're doing LEED certified projects only because the client doesn't want to spend the money. And it's not about the materials a lot of times. It's more about the HVAC systems and all of that other stuff that I think they feel like, well, the materials can all be environmentally, you know, friendly, and we can achieve a lot of the things that we really want for our employees, for the space, but we don't need that plaque on the wall kind of thing. So, which I find interesting. We went so far, like every project had to be it, and all of a sudden it was, don't worry about it, it's fine.
Yeah. No, I would agree. We don't really hear very much about LEED projects. I mean, I work I would say 80+% of the projects that I work on are workplace. So that's kind of became our niche somewhere along the way. I think it was actually after the recession somehow. The designers are asking, the firms themselves are thinking very critically about sustainability, how they manage their libraries, what materials they'll bring into the library, the working within standards that have become sort of commonplace from firm to firm, certainly reducing a lot of redundancy in sampling, as far as the projects themselves, I would agree with you. We don't really hear so much about LEED projects earning those credits as we did at one time.
So tell us a little bit about, you know, the founding of your company, how you started this, and why, and exactly what kind of materials are you sourcing for us?
Well, this is the fun part. So I started on rollerblades. It was 1998. I'm an art school kid, and so I was a fine arts major at SVA as sculpture. And so I had a lot of fun, made a lot of fun things in art school. At that time, you know, SVA was only about $7,000 a year, so you could actually be middle-class kid and go to art school and not come out with, you know, $200,000 in debt or whatever it is now. So you could take that kind of a risk. You know, my father was like, "What are you going to do with an fine arts degree?" I don't know, Dad. Okay, well, go for it. We know she's not going to go into liberal arts. You know, so. I came out with that, and it was a little bit of like, oh, okay, like now what? But again, it was the 90s. You know, you could still kind of do things, and you could still sort of live in New York. So I ran around for a bunch of years as a commercial sculptor and a model maker. Wow. And I made special effects and props and all kinds of things. And at that time, that wasn't not all being made by computer-generated imagery. We were actually physically making things for TV commercials and stuff. I did a lot of Absolute vodka ads and things like that. And so I knew a lot of people that made cool things and worked with materials. And we were all kind of like knowing that our industry was going to go down the tubes because things were being made with computers, imagery at that time, and we were like, this is, and plus it was toxic chemicals, and it was all freelance. I mean, it wasn't a career. And I was really good at getting the job for myself. You know, I'd walk into these places and I'd, be able to turn on the charm a little bit, and I'd get hired all the time. But I wasn't really that exacting. I wasn't really a great model maker, to be honest. It took a level of exacting that precision that just I worked with a lot of Japanese people that were like beyond. I mean, I'd be like, I'm never going to be that. I mean, this is just ridiculous. So I rounded everybody up and I said, we got to find something to do here, guys. Because this isn't. We're all in our 20s, and what are we going to do for the rest of our lives? And I looked in Interior Design magazine, and I found out about the ICFF, the International Furniture Fair. And I just started to look at the architecture industry. So I said, there's got to be a place where we can go where things will always have to be made, where physical things will actually have to be made. I need to find a career, something that I can do for a long time. I looked at advertising. Those people were like making tons of money when they were in their 20s, and then they'd get fired by like 30 years old. I said, I don't want that. So where is there going to be some longevity? That's really what it came down to. And I picked architecture. And Material Connection had just started at that time. You maybe remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
George Balerian, industry veteran, great, did this incredible library of all these cool materials. It was the time, right? And back then, you could literally pick up the phone and, and call people. And I did. And I just said, like, I've got all these crazy materials. My name's Robin. Can I roll over, and show you, hello, Rockwell Group, okay, never heard of you, but all right. Gensler, all right, wow, they're in Rockefeller Center, they must be pretty fancy, And it was just the time, and I got very early acceptance. And I mean, I guess it was a little wacky. I was like a mid-20s, on literally on rollerblades. I don't know if you know this,
but you're a pioneer in this world. I mean, you really are.
I got a lot of early acceptance. I really did. People were like, "Who is this chick?" Probably still had a pretty strong New York accent because I know it's gone now. And I'd come rolling in, and I'd have all these crazy materials that people weren't working with resin yet. Really, it was very new, all that stuff. And so, I got a lot of it. And then I got, introduced to people. And again, back to the magazine, I got on a cover and a very large spread in Interior Design magazine, a market issue. And, I kind of became, and it was funny because I was living in my little apartment in Staten Island, where I'm from. Watch it. And, here I am. I got the cover of the Interior Design market tabloid, and page after page of big full page of my product. And then at the end where it had, the credits with all the people, it was like, Knoll on, Worcester Street, and, all these like fancy companies.
Oh, no.
Robin Reigi, 48 Scribner Avenue, apartment 2F. With like my little 718 phone number, and that was it, and just kind of like never looked back.
That's
really.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we're still a really small company. I mean, the thing is, we're mighty because we're kind of, we've been doing it for so long, but we decided not to grow a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you find these materials? How do you go about? Some of them you've actually created and patented yourself.
Yes.
How do you do this?
Yes. So, well, if you do one thing for a really long time, eventually you start to get pretty good at it, and people do accept, you eventually, So, believe it or not, we actually like it when people come to us first because you, frankly, in better negotiating position. And if anybody that, knows us, knows other reps and industry people, we're pretty picky in terms of who we'll work with and how we'll work with a company because, I don't want to get too into the weeds on how we work as industry people, but when you're taking on an innovative material that nobody's ever seen before and has zero sales, you are pioneering. I mean, I am a pioneer when it comes to these kinds of things because nobody's ever seen a lot of this stuff. Even our Shinoki material now, which is like really blown up and an incredible, nobody knew about it when we took it on 15 years ago. So you have to really vet these companies. You have to not only know that they're going to have your back if something, should go wrong, or they're going to be able to supply sampling. They're going to be able to get their testing, and when they become big and they can kind of get rid of you and hire some schmuck in your place and pay them, whatever, because they don't need to, pioneer in a market anymore, that they're going to stick with you, So there's like a mutual loyalty. So we know everybody out there in terms of all those, new materials. And whenever we see something new coming up, we always try to, understand it and, look at it and really do our homework. But we tend to wait until people come to us because we want a manufacturer to have like the highest level of respect for us when we work with them, because it's every aspect of what we do is a long game. There is nothing sprinty and short about our side of the industry, and I would imagine yours too, right? Because these projects going. So if you're getting into bed with these folks, you need to know that there's somebody that you have to at least have, and be able to be optimistic that it's going to be a long term, and thus our relationships go 20 years.
Yeah,
Plyboot, we've been for 20 years. Shinoki, DecoSpan, probably close to 20 years now. So some of them, 3-5 years, and it's just, for whatever reason doesn't, go the long distance. But it really, long distance, that's what we look for. So probably not the most exciting answer. We're not spending, we don't have a team of interns necessarily looking, doing research on materials all day long. It's really finding that fit because, listen, this isn't fashion, right? This is architecture. You have to have something that will stand the test of time. You have to have a manufacturer that's going to be able to really meet all of that criteria.
Yeah, and not go out of business 5 years from
or
now.
not, or just fall on you. And they do. I mean, there's a lot of these companies, they all have their own character. The Europeans are much more methodical, but they take a much longer time to come to market with things. The Americans are the cowboys. We tend to fly out of the gate with stuff, new things all the time. Although, since COVID, that's another story. But, not necessarily vetted as much. So you have to be careful when you're, sales reps have a tendency to be like, oh, that's the new thing. I can't wait to take that out and show it to every architect I know. It's going to make me look really great and everybody's going to be excited. And then it's like, but do you have a sample? No. Do you know how much it costs? No. Do you have fire rating? No.
Yeah.
So you just have to be a little bit of a pragmatist, or a lot of a pragmatist, I think.
What are some of the trends right now? And I use trends, I don't want to necessarily use that word, but the newer products that are out now that you're seeing a lot of momentum with?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly everybody's talking about mass timber. We're seeing it sort of filter its way into almost every kind of discussion about architecture.
Yeah.
We're on the show. I mean, so many of our projects are utilizing mass timber. For interiors, I think natural materials are still strong. I have seen a little bit more of a move towards back to translucency, which is interesting.
Oh, okay.
So I always say, when things come back, it's like if Anna Gray comes back, I'm ready to retire. If Wenge comes back, I'm ready. Everything kind of comes back full circle.
I'm pretty convinced cubicles are going to come back.
Cubicles, right? Ice blocks, right? In wood, which we deal a lot with, we're moving away from the lighter. I mean, this is a beautiful. I actually have this color in my own kitchen, but we're seeing them kind of move more towards deeper tones, more somber tones. But yet, we're seeing a conversation about bringing in translucency, bringing in light is coming more. I always say when I hear something 3 times, I know that it's going to be a little bit of a trend. So certainly, sustainability, I hope, is not a trend, but it is something that comes into every conversation. And acoustics remain very strong. We've been in this felt period for so many years now. And that was the PET felt was a material that kind of came in and has remained simply because I don't think that it checks so many boxes. And I think that it brings in color and it brings in acoustic absorbency. But I think that we're kind of looking at how to expand the palette of acoustic materials. So we're exploring that a lot with some of our materials as well.
Do you run into issues where a contractor will turn around and say, I can actually source this material from China cheaper, or a sort of bogus version of that material?
Absolutely not. Never. I have never even heard of that. I have no idea what you're talking about. Nobody has ever knocked off one of my materials. I mean, that's a sort of a daily. China, not so much, because I'll tell you that's one of the reasons why I love Workplace. Workplace projects are small enough and fast enough that they have to be nimble.
Yep.
And so there's really that whole China thing doesn't come up as much. If I was in maybe multi-unit housing or in hospitality, I think those are the areas where you see overseas replication a lot more prevalent.
Yeah.
It's really our battle is with the contractors themselves. I mean, any contractors in the room, sorry. Love our subs, but, they do have a tendency to kind of, we call him Joe Schmo, Joe Schmo contractor. I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. You kidding? There's wood stuff here. There's, this is just oak. What? So I spend a lot of my time reinforcing the differences between what we do with the products that we offer and what Joe Schmo it would basically come back with given the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so but it's a daily battle. I mean, that's just part of the business is value engineering. It is what it is.
Yeah.
We just again, I mean, it has a lot to do with vetting materials that can't be replicated so easily. So that's another one. If a manufacturer comes around and you're like, that's just too easy to knock off, that's one of the things where you'll be like, maybe not. We need to talk about that a little more.
The Shark Tank version of
exactly. We're the Shark Tank. I could be a shark. I want to be like Barbara. I would be like the Barbara on the Shark Tank.
I like that.
Or the Spanx lady.
So I do want to talk about Material Bank, and I'm curious.
Okay.
Do you see platforms like this as competition or collaboration? How does that work? And for those that don't know what Material Bank is, it's essentially you go online and you order your materials and they show up. And in New York City, they show up within sometimes, a half hour kind of thing.
Our stuff shows up in a half hour. Their stuff, I think there are 24 hours or
That's
overnight. Right. But I've never heard of them. No. So listen, I am thankful that this platform, which we knew would have come eventually anyway, came through folks that are in the family, right? I said Interior Design Magazine really launched my business many years ago. So, Standout Media, God bless them. It was a brilliant idea. Somebody had to do it. You knew it was going to happen eventually.
Yep.
I'm glad that it happened within, our own world as opposed to, another kind of tech giant coming in and, kind of knocking us all, out of the way. Many of our materials have and continue to be on Material Bank, so we utilize the platform as partners. So, I certainly wouldn't call it a competition.
Okay.
If Mr. Sandow would like to sit down with me and talk about ways that I would like to make the platform a little bit more rep friendly, I definitely have some ideas about that.
I like that.
So available. We have met.
We'll broker a podcast.
Yeah, well,
for
we
that.
have met. We met years ago when it was a little bit of a seedling of an idea. So, but I think really they have made, and I would like to give kudos, they have made an effort to integrate reps, I think, more than ever before.
Okay.
But, look, I'll be frank, if I can be a little bit critical. What I don't love about any digital platform, and I don't want to single out any one because there's others out there that do sample fulfillment, is that it does separate the supplier and not just the rep. I mean, just put the rep aside for a moment, even the manufacturer, from not only the designer, but also the project in many ways, right? And so you're ceding a lot to a platform where you're basically allowing to have another entity be in that space of sample fulfillment. And so, an old school rep, anybody that's been around for a while knows that, that sample is historically been our currency, right? Mm-hmm. So, you want a sample? Well, maybe I haven't seen you in a while. Maybe I'll come and drop that off in person and we can chat. Maybe have a coffee. Maybe see how your kids are doing.
And I'll leave 30 other materials behind as well.
And that's right. And we can talk about door openers because that's one that, any rep knows about that as well. Yeah. So that's, kind of how it's all been for years, right? The sample was sort of the entry point, right? And it also fostered a lot of relationships and a lot of brainstorming. And so without that being so much the way in for an industry person or a rep, you can say, okay, well, I guess it's over, and I'm just going to pack up my things and go home and curl up and die. Or you can do what some of us have done, come up with other ways, And so
like
that's
this.
Yes, Slinkies, man, It's a great material. No, but just coming up with other ways to engage, other ways to stay relevant. Listen, this is New York City. You got to be tough, right? You don't hang around and stay in business for nearly 30 years as a small business and stay small and not get squashed like a bug. I always said we're like no-see-ums, Jennifer and I, my partner and I. Like we're so small, you just can't kill us. You just can't even find us, let alone look. We're too small to fail, But so you just have to stay ahead of it. But it's changed and disrupted the industry away from that sample being the primary currency of the sales rep.
Okay.
In a way that now, we have to sort of think differently about the value that we bring to the architect.
Yeah.
We have to think differently about how they're utilizing our services. I'm sure you can get the sample there faster, like we messenger samples in an hour or whatever, but it's not about a race to who can get the sample to the designer faster. It's really about how we're all adjusting to the new world and the new way that the speed that things are happening at, and staying relevant as things change, and coming up with ways to stay relevant as things change. And so, and I think that most of us have done a pretty good job.
You've done a great job. Well, listen, my wife's a rep, and I always tell her, if you want your stuff on projects, the easiest thing you can do is go in, have the relationship with the person, and leave your materials behind, because just going back to designers are in a hurry all the time, and look at that material, that's perfect. Let me put that on my project, and just kind of being there and being accessible, and before you know it, you're on a project.
Yeah.
And then being able to have the knowledge to answer the questions about that. That's where the digital platform, just like what we talked about early on in terms of just, putting a material on a rendering, doesn't make it so that you have the knowledge behind that material of how it performs, why it performs, how it gets seamed together. I mean, there's so much nuance to all of that you as the rep know where the computer doesn't.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and we're going to see that with AI now as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, actually, we have an evolving policy on AI at FIT, because it's changing so quickly. I think we're also changing, and we're going to see how designers deal with AI information, right?
Yeah, let's get into the AI a little bit. I'm curious. So what is that? What is the evolving, or what is the latest thinking in terms of at the college level on AI?
Right. Well, can I get back to you on that? Because we're about to have a full day seminar.
Oh, nice.
There's going to be a symposium at FIT. There's going to be breakout sessions. I think there's going to be some grad level students there, a lot of speakers. But it's a moving target. It is, because you've got all these different pieces to it. I mean, teachers want to use it. It makes it a lot easier to develop or polish up a lecture or PowerPoint. Students are going to use it, so it's just a question of staying ahead of them and and harnessing it some way.
Yeah.
You can't try to stop it, because then we're not going to be able to compete. But you also don't want all of our collective minds to end up just being homogenized, which I think is the greatest concern, right? Everything that comes out of AI has the tendency to sort of come out in this very homogenized format. I just learned about contrast phrasing. That's where it's all like, it's not about this, it's about that.
Yeah.
It's not about, it's not just this. It's
well, one of the things that you're going to see in the profession soon are prompt designers, right? Designers that know how to really tell an AI what to do.
Yeah.
There are already tremendous amount of in other professions that
I'm
have
finding
that.
them.
Yeah, which is very interesting. We have a couple here. They're educated as architects or designers, but they happen to be really good at that, right? And we use them to prompt the various AI systems that we're using to create imagery or create something associated with it. But we always see it's listen, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's another tool right now. I mean, who knows what happens in the future, but it truly is a great tool. I mean, it saves us a tremendous amount of time, especially free work. I just talked in another podcast about free work and how architects give out too much free work. This is kind of a great version of that, where we can use some of these softwares to do that free work, and here's your free work, and it's just a marketing effort, which is great, as opposed to spending a week of doing free work and burning 40 hours of time, which is interesting. We also are seeing it in efficiencies. there are tremendous platforms out there that you can show it an object and it'll create a 3D model of it within seconds, a perfect 3D model, and now we can integrate that into our design. So there's a lot of efficiency in there, which is awesome. Or take a still rendering and turning it into an animation, which is
undeniable.
It's cool. It can be a little hokey. The client sometimes doesn't notice the hokiness of it, but it looks, it does the job. It helps convince the client, which is interesting.
Sure. Well, again, we'll see. I mean, right now, the policy for FIT is we basically have to choose between 3 options for AI. One is no AI, no how, no way. The other one is limited AI with permission and crediting source. And then the third option is full and open AI, but still crediting source.
Right.
So those are the 3 options that you can choose as a faculty for your classes. So I actually chose option 2, which was limited AI, because I don't want my students to feel like they're behind. I don't want anybody to be sneaking. And I'd like to be able to use it myself. I have actually. I've spruced up some of my lectures. And it's like, hey, ChatGPT, this, help me integrate this element. We're talking about bio-based materials now more than ever before. And nanotechnology, and these are new to everybody. So doing research makes it like you said, just sort of flies. So
it's going to be there.
See.
Students are going to use it regardless. I think my daughters are very different. I have my 16-year-old who will use AI to sort of expand on her work. Double check it. Really kind of think it through. So as a tool, basically. And then I have my younger one who will, say, basically, do my homework for me and then print it out and go, look, I'm done.
Right.
And you go, did you use AI for this? And she'll say, no.
Yeah. That's what I think classroom presentations are going to help with that. Yeah.
So there's value to it somewhere in there. So you just got to find the balance. But kids are going to use it.
Yeah, they're going to use it.
For sure.
That's my feeling. That's why I wouldn't try to restrict it. It's just, then you just kind of, I didn't deal with my daughter that way. We sort of have to work around the inevitable, things that kids are going to do and experiment with and just try to kind of manage it, right? So I think it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about sort of all of the many things that you do outside of your company, but all industry or mostly industry related, right? So talk a little bit about IIDA. I mean, you're going to be the president of IIDA New York. You've won the Hazel Siegel Scholarship, your Student Uplift Program. There's so many things that you do as part of this industry that really help move the industry forward. So talk a little bit about those things.
Well, thank you, first of all, for the acknowledgement. It means a lot to me. IIDA has been a really incredible time for me, and I'm really excited and thrilled that I will be president next year. That was not an easy hurdle because it's a historic moment. I'm actually the first industry person, or interior designer to
congrats.
Be president of the New York chapter. There have been in other chapters, but our chapter has been a bit of a purist, I guess, in that sense. And I did have to change my membership from an industry membership to a professional membership to qualify, which that fine arts degree Dad did actually end up working for me eventually. So I had to show my transcript twice in the last couple of months, not once in 30 years and twice in the last few months.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, they're not that hard to get hold of. So I'm just about IIDA. I mean, I would just say that I started back a good 6 years ago. When are we in? 2025, 26? Just around 2020, Annie Lee, who was the president at the time, who's a friend of mine, called me up. And she was a very disruptive president. I think I could say that. Nobody would argue with me. She was the one that got in there and started all kinds of committees and did all kinds of new stuff. And before that, nobody ever really asked me to join. And Annie literally just called me up and she's like, so I want you to join IIDA. And I've got a couple of ideas for you. And I know that you teach, so I thought maybe something with students. And so you can pick between this thing and that thing. And of course, if you know Annie, nobody says no to Annie, right? It's just, and so I said, okay, and I said, what am I getting myself into? And then something happened. It took me a little while to kind of get my feet wet, but it really transformed me because before that, I mean, I had always done a lot of things and I'd like to stay busy. I've taught and stuff, but I was always, Robin and Jennifer, we're a very small business. We have a small studio in Flatiron. We've always deliberately kept it small. I don't like managing people. I like the way that I do my life, ride my bike to work, all those sorts of things. And then being part of IIDA opened me up to this whole other thing, which was very large-scale collaboration, leadership, opportunities to grow something outside of just my own little business, and philanthropic work, being a volunteerism in general. And through it, I just found all of these new aspects of myself that I really didn't even know existed. I really never talked about anything except materials for the first 25 years of my career, 20 years of my career, because it was my lane. That's what I did. I know materials. Want to have a conversation? Let's talk materials. That I do. That's my thing. Now, I have all of these other things, and I have to say it really started with IIDA because it led me to understanding all these things about the industry that I didn't know, like dealers. I never even knew what dealers did. I was like, what do dealers do? Like, what is a dealer anyway? Now I know tons of dealers and all of this stuff, and all of the aspects of the industry and how it works. So I'm very excited that I've had this time to grow. And like I said, nothing happens quickly in this industry. I got to this point where I'm going to be president next year, but that didn't happen overnight. This is no meteoric rise, and I'm proud of that. But my VP of these last years, Elizabeth Mejia, is president now. And Elizabeth and I actually see this as kind of a 2-year period because I'm supporting her as her elect.
Okay.
And then next year I'll be president and she'll support me, and that's where we worked all these years together.
That's great.
So right now we're currently on a listening tour. We've branded it as such, and we're meeting with every single committee, and we're really understanding what people really want. And one of the things that I've learned is that by meeting with committee members, you have these different types of members. You have people that come in and just kind of want to do their time and fulfill their kind of thing, and then they get into it and they get the fire in the belly and they start to really innovate and do new things. And then you have folks that just kind of don't know where to go with it, and they tend to kind of stay with what was done before.
Okay.
So we like to go in and I sit with people and I listen and listen and listen, and then it's like holding a mirror up and saying, if you could do anything that you wanted with this sustainability committee or any of our design camp, all of the things that we do, what would you do with it? Where would you take it? Well, I might try to go for legislation, or I might try to change the way kids approach design or look or know about design. And suddenly people start to get really creative because we're a creative industry. Mm-hmm. So our goal in the next year is to basically look to every single one of our members and just light them up and get them to be excited about not worrying about what was done before, not necessarily getting stuck with the playbook that was given to them, and saying, where do I want to take this, and helping them shine and help the chapter just glow and grow. So
you're going to be really good at this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm pretty
excited.
excited. My goal is to have it be a transformational
Well, that's great. Let us know how we can help here, too. So
thank you. Well, as a matter of fact, I have one for you. You might want to cut this out if you say no. But can I put you on the spot for a second? Okay, so we have it. I've been waiting for this. You walked right into it, Christian.
Cool.
Okay, so we have an event every year called SUP, which is SUP.
Yep.
SUP, and it stands for Student Uplift. And what we do, and we held it at an architecture firm every fall, so you can see where this is going. And what we do is we basically connect designers and young students and young emerging designers with our sponsors in a forum that basically creates a sort of how can I say, just sort of everybody sort of together and supporting one another. So we have an educational portion. We have a matching ceremony where we basically say, Christian, you have been connected with your new mentor from Miller Knoll, or this Janie, you are now connected with Hayworth, and we match our sponsors with our students as a mentoring opportunity, and now we're even bringing in emerging designers and connecting them to create like a little triad, and the student gets a free membership, which is nice, but it's really more about sort of bringing all of those parties together.
That's great.
So this will be our third year. Last year we did it at Ted Moodis. The year before that, Perkins and Will. And I was wondering if
Absolutely.
you guys,
we built this
you have
office
the space
specifically for
it.
this. Yeah.
We'll have to put the booze away for the afternoon. We'll cover the bar. But no, I was really hoping that we could do it because Jessica is a past president of ours, and we try to stick with. You guys are advocate firms of IIDA, so there's a lot of things to kind of bring it together.
That'd be great. I'd love to.
And
we literally built this office to host industry events. That's why we built it the way we did.
Okay, so you heard it here, folks.
Yep.
So it's November 7th, but we can be flexible about the date.
Okay.
And we've been holding off until I came here today because I was planning on asking you.
Done.
Didn't know if we'd have a chance to do it on air, but I was kind of hoping. So, yes, so the third annual SUP, IIDA New York SUP event.
Amazing.
We're in. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. Details to come.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, is there anything we haven't covered that you would want to tell the listeners?
Oh, now let me see. Well, we talked about so many things. I would just say, first of all, and this just goes out to all of our industry people out there. I've been in business for many years. I've been around, a good long time. This is the only job I've ever had. And I think a lot of people in our industry that are at the later middle stages of their career are kind of looking around and seeing, where do they fit in? Mm-hmm. Is there a place for them? With technology changing so rapidly, everybody's sort of wondering what's going to happen with AI. And I would just want to kind of shout out to all of the people that I have known in this industry for all of the years that I've been around, that we've been kind of supporting each other, and just kind of say that, as all of these things that I do and the leadership that I try to develop and encourage in others, it really is all about keeping our community together, keeping us connected with one another. And I just try to really make myself available to be that person for not just the younger generation, because everybody knows I'm all about the students and the kids, but for our, mid to upper level career people, which I think sometimes feel like they're kind of getting a little pushed aside. And so I just want to kind of give a shout out to those of us that are in there and keeping the faith in this industry, and whether they be architects or folks like myself.
I love that.
So,
that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and a shout out to everybody at IIDA for giving me the opportunity to be the role that I'm going to be taking on in my presidency.
Very cool. Robin, thank you so much for being my guest here on the Anti-Architect podcast. As I said earlier, you're a pioneer as part of this profession, and very grateful to that you agreed to come on.
Thank you very much, Christian. It's great to be here. I love your T-shirt. I'm wondering if that comes as a gift.
We can absolutely give you one. Yes. I don't know if we have any here, but we have them.
You got the Slinky. I should get the T-shirt.
We have a whole closet full of them.
Thank you very much.
So to learn more about Robin, you can visit robinreigi.com. Her LinkedIn as well, and then America ByDesign, which is, if you go to that website, it's bydesign.global, and you can see all the episodes there.
Yeah, and they're also all over YouTube.
Yep. Amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, because I had a ball. It was a lot of fun to be here today.
Awesome.